evening. My name is Michael Randolph, and I'm the CEO for the Center for Nonprofit and Community Development. Today's workshop, and this is one of our most popular workshops that we give, is titled How to Start, Operate, Finance, and Grow a Nonprofit. This is one of the most comprehensive workshops, seminars on nonprofit development and grant development. So, what do we know about the state of nonprofits? According to Forbes, 50% of nonprofits fail within the first 12 months of operation. Add to this, 76% of nonprofits operate on a budget of less than $500,000, and nearly 1/3 operate with just $30,000 yearly. Primarily made up of 43% of operation with only one full-time employee. This workshop was designed to change those numbers and put you in a winning position. So this brings about our mission, looking at those numbers. So what do we do? And what is our primary mission? Our mission is to strengthen organizations that strengthen communities, be it a neighborhood, be it a particular group in the community, and a group that's as part of the community, whatever the case might be, we strengthen organizations that strengthen communities. We put them in a winning position so they don't become part of those numbers, in which a lot of nonprofits that's out there operating with no employees or only one employee. We have a whole list of professional workshop and services that we provide, including grant writing, business development, project development, putting together SWOT analogies, doing feasibility studies, government procurement, and preparing the paperwork for nonprofits to start their own 501c3, to name a few. So a little bit of information about me. So I've been in the work of nonprofit development for well over 30 years. I started as a community organizer, and from there I went into program development. From program development, I went into training and grant and funding development, to strategic and tactical planning, to where we are today. The picture that you're looking at is a picture of me giving a lecture at the University of South Florida on community development, economic development, and nonprofit development. There was a group of grad students. I did it twice. They brought me back twice. And in Baltimore, at John Hopkins, back in the day, I did a workshop on community development, funding development, and economic development. So I've been around for a minute. I started the nonprofit and this nonprofit in 2011 to make sure that those numbers that we spoke about earlier, remember that 50% of nonprofits that failed in the first year, or those other nonprofits that continue but are struggling just to make it? That's why we started in 2011 to address that issue. And that is that to provide technical support in the area of effective skill sets to start up nonprofits and existing nonprofits. To do what? To enhance, increase, and strengthen their capacity to service their client. We use what's known as national best practice and evidence-based approaches to getting that nonprofit to where it needs to be. To date, we've provided technical assistance in terms of direct services, in terms of consulting, or in terms of our many free workshops to over 3,500 nonprofits, government agencies, faith-based groups, businesses, and individuals in over 20 states. In addition to that, we've worked with nonprofits in those 20 states. We've worked with over 300 nonprofits in those 20 states to get their nonprofits started by providing them with the paperwork necessary to start that nonprofit. So we're going to be talking about everything nonprofit. And we're going to break it up into two sections. The first section is going to talk about the nonprofit itself. How do you start a nonprofit? What are the key things that you need to get that nonprofit started? Now, some of the things that we're going to be talking about is when we deal with the learning objectives related to the nonprofit is, what is a nonprofit? What are bylaws? What's a purpose statement? What's an articles of incorporation? What's a conflict of interest policy? A solicitation requirement? The application itself to get your 501c3 status. And also, we're going to talk about the 3 stages of starting a nonprofit. Sit back. I guarantee you that tonight you're going to get so much information. But knowledge is power and wealth is information. We've had students to take this class that were professional grant writers and nonprofit operators, and they left this class with a much better understanding. We use a new school, next generation approach. Let's start off by talking about what is a nonprofit. Well, a nonprofit is a tax-exempt organization that serves a public interest, the purpose of which can be charitable, educational, etc. When starting your nonprofit, first you want to start with your concepts, your conceptualization. The first thing you want to do is to begin to talk about what is your purpose? That is, why do your organization exist and what do it do? A lot of people confuse this with the mission statement. I'm sorry, the vision statement. The vision statement, which is the next conceptualization element, and the vision is, what is your organization? What does your organization believe or ideal conditions for your community? That is, what do things look like if the issues that are important to you were completely and perfectly addressed? Vision statements are futuristic. It talks about, hey, if we get in the game, this is what the world is going to look like. Your mission statement, and people have a tendency to confuse your mission statement with your vision statement with your purpose statement. Your mission statement, that is, it's an organization. This is where the organization describes what the group is doing, what it's going to do, and why is it going to do that. Now, let's jump into the three stages of a nonprofit. Now that we have created the mindset now to start the nonprofit. And there are three stages to a nonprofit, contrary to popular belief. There's so many nonprofits that get started, and again, it goes back to that number, 50% that fail within the first year because they don't go through the three stages to be successful. Let's get started. Stage one, the beginning. Well, and we call this the emerging stage. This is when you're putting together your bylaws. And your bylaws are those, that document the responsibility of each one. So everybody know what they're supposed to be doing. The president, for example, the secretary, the treasurer, and on and on. All board members know what their responsibilities are and how you operate as an organization. It sets the laws for your organization. Which bring about the next document, which is your articles of incorporation. These documents you file with your state. These articles you file with your state. And the articles of incorporation is when you talk to the state that, hey, look, we want to be sanctioned as a nonprofit to operate in the state. For example, in the state of Florida, you will register with the Florida Department of State. That's where you will file for your organization document. Your article of incorporation deals with. Let me back up for a second. I did not mean to say, what was that word I used? That you're going to be sanctioned. I didn't mean sanctioned. I meant to say you're going to be recognized. That's what's happened when you're doing back-to-back classes. For the last 2 weeks, I've been doing 2 to 3 classes on some subject matter related to nonprofit and business development. How long you're going to be in existence. It talks about your purpose, why you're doing what you do. Your articles of incorporation set the whole dialogue and structure of your organization. I give a whole class on articles of incorporation. The next thing you want to do is to get your EIN number. That's your Federal Employees Identification Number. Once you've done that, the next thing you want to do is to file for your 501c status. That's called the Form 10, the 1023. And you file this to ask the federal government to give you exemption from filing taxes. You can also get exemption from filing taxes by filing with the state, known as state exemption. Majority of the state do have state exemption, where you get exemption from paying sales taxes. The majority do, but a few of them don't. I think about 3, maybe 4 don't. The other thing is that all charitable organizations must file what's known as a permit to solicit donations and funds from that particular state. and also to get your license to operate as a nonprofit. A lot of nonprofits are operating, but they don't have their license to operate as a nonprofit. They file with the state to be recognized as a nonprofit, but they haven't actually filed with the state to ask them to operate as a nonprofit, and this is what we call solicitation. And of course, you want to get that EIN number. Your 501c3, you want to file that because then you want to be able to actually get people to donate. And you want to get people to donate through your 501c3, and you don't want to pay sales taxes. That's why you file that state exemption exception. Again, this is stage one, the emerging stage. Stage two. Stage two is known as the intermediate stage. This is when you begin to put together your human resources needs. This is also when you begin to put together your board training. Now, I should have mentioned in stage one, it's also when you begin to put together your board of directors. That's when you find your articles of incorporation. That's when you begin to say, hey, here are the entities that run the organization, known as the board of directors. Now, in stage two, once you got that board set up, then what funders want to see is how often is your board getting training to make sure they stay up to par. The other thing you want to do in your second or intermediate stage is to put together your policies and procedures, be it your board of director orientation manual, your financial manual, your employee manuals, and your conflict of interest, and I can go on and on with that you have to have together. And then finally, you want to definitely have your staff together. What are your staff needs? Who is it that you need to be able to staff the program to bring about your vision and your mission? And finally, let's get to stage three. Stage three is also known as the advanced stage. This is when you have in place your organization operation, your program development, your front-end development. You're growing the nonprofit. This is where we got talk about your SWOT analogy. We'll talk about it a little bit later on. Your SWOT analogy looks at how do you grow your nonprofit. Then you want to have put together your financial management system. You have to be accountable and credible and transparent when it comes to money that come into your organization and what you use that money for. And then next is your marketing plan. How do you market what you do and who you are? Public relationship is another important component. And then your online presence and your visibility is also a key component. While this is not unlimited, it is some of the key components that you want to have together on your during your advanced stage. I must say that technology is another component that you have to have into place. Technology in general, and specifically the use of artificial intelligence. Okay, now we've gone over that. We've gone over the different stages of a nonprofit, and now let's start to talk about, okay, since we had that together, how do we put together the money to get the funding? And how do we make sure that our organization is ready to get the moolah, the money, the cash? So we're going to be breaking this presentation is the second part of the presentation. This presentation, what are your learning objectives from this part of the presentation? Remember your learning objective from the first part of the presentation when we dealt with the organization. Now, the second part of the presentation is going to deal with how do you get funding? Where is the money at? How do you take your organization to the next level to be able to grow? So this talks about financing. This talks about operating. This talks also about how to grow your nonprofit. Your learning objectives should be describe the different types of grants, the different types of grantors, the research to find the grants, the fundamentals of writing a grant, the proposal writing process. What is the process? You also should begin to have some thoughts about how do you create your organizational structure. The other thing I want you to leave away from after this section is you should be able to identify grant terms. And then finally, you should start to think about what are my next steps? Am I really built for doing a nonprofit? And can I survive being a nonprofit? Okay, what do funders consider when they are thinking about funding an organization? Reality. There are literally thousands of people that are putting together a proposal for a grant. And there's limited funding opportunities. Unlike a lot of your funding or grant writing classes, they don't talk about what do the funders look for. Every one of these things that I'm going to talk about is going to be covered in the upcoming lessons. So let's start with what's the first thing that a funder look for? Well, it look for what is your sustainable financial model. Then is how is your organization different than another nonprofit? That is based on the nonprofits doing the same thing that you're doing. How do you differ from them? Then you have to provide, and they want to know what is the hard and the soft data that supports your need of the problem. And when we say hard and soft data, we'll talk about that a little bit later on. The other thing they want to know is, what are your measurement tools that you're going to use to show what success looks like, and how do you and how do you get there to success? The what and the how and the why. Then they want to know, well, what's the reason for starting your nonprofit? Why are you starting a nonprofit? The other thing they want to know is, what is your value? What value do you bring to the table? What is your value statement as a nonprofit? For example, our value statement is that no nonprofit that seeks help will be denied the help they need to be the best that they can be. The other thing you want to do, and this is key, you want to talk about who are you networking with, who are you partnershiping with, and who are you collaborating with, etc. Another key component is your accounting practice. You better make sure you know how to be transparent and accountable when it comes to those dollars. So you have to follow the standard accounting practice. All proposal should be plausible, feasible, sustainable, sellable, and it must be a fundable proposal. And that's what this class is all about, being able to address all of these key considerations when it comes to a funder. Now, what are the different types of grants that's out there? Well, you have what's known as unrestricted grants. These grants are far and few, but these grants may be used for general purposes related to the organization and not necessarily the programs that the organization operates. The other types of grant is called restricted grants. And restricted grants are restricted to what the agreement is that you're supposed to use for that particular program that you want to do, as opposed to unrestricted grants, which provides general support for organization. Let's talk about some types of restricted grants. Well, you have what's known as program and development grants. Then you have what's known as seed money. That is, seed money is money you use to get started. Then you have what's known as capital grants. Capital grants is like for buying physical land, construction, renovation, land acquisition, etc. Then you have some funders that are known as endowment. These endowments tend to be colleges and universities and things of that nature. Then you have what's known as challenging or matching grants. This is like, for example, you're going for $100,000 in a grant, and the organization said, we will give you 80,000, but you have to show us how you're going to get the other 20,000. It's called challenge and matching grant. And trust me, as you're going to learn later on, there are literally over 5,000, up to 10,000 different types of funders that's out there that's giving money. We're going to talk about where's the money a little bit later on. And then finally, and a lot of people underrate this particular type of grant like entity, it's called in-kind support. This is what we're talking like pro bono, something that's done for free. And if you're just getting started as a nonprofit, and you have or if you have an existing nonprofit, you should always try to get volunteers. And when you get volunteers, it goes to show that other people buy into your program. And the reason why that's important because when you go for a grant, part of your budget can show how many volunteers you have. And then you can equate that with a dollar amount of what you would pay that individual if you was paying that individual. That goes good in your favor to show what resources you bring to the table. In-kind support can also be like a lawyer that volunteer time to your organization, and normally this lawyer get paid $50 an hour, and they commit to doing at least 400 hours a year with your organization. You can calculate that in your in-kind support section. Or the accountant decide to provide pro bono work, and that accountant might normally pay $200 an hour. So I think you get what I just what I'm saying. They attach a monetary value to that particular individual that's doing pro bono work for your organization. Okay, well, we know the types of grants that's out there. Now, let's talk about the different types of grantors. And we're going to talk about in the different columns. The first column is going to be known as your resource. The second column is going to be known as what are the advantages of going after that particular funder. And then the final column here, column 3, is going to deal with the disadvantages. So let's talk about the different types. The first is the individual. They by far give probably the largest amount in a lot of cases is individual. They give a very large amount of money, your friends, or people that buy into your organization. They tend to be also repeated. So these are what we call individuals that give money. It's a large resource of giving. They are ongoing resources that one can build on. And once they start giving, they also become an advocate. There are also disadvantages to that, and that it's hard to generate that it's hard to generate unless your board-based service appeal. You have a board-based service appeal, so it's hard unless you have a board-based service appeal. And then you have what's known as your family and community foundations. I'm gonna go a little bit fast and not read each one of these items. Your family and community foundation, again, is a source of large amounts of money. The problem is they start up the startup funds. They give only startup funds, and there's a lengthy process, but it's doable. Now, your family foundation is like your biological connection, and then you have what's known as your community foundation. Community foundation is like organization that operate in a particular community, like the Hillsborough County, Miami, Baltimore City. They operate out of a particular community. The next type of funding. So let's let me step back 1 second when I talked about the foundation, and they're very important, a good resource of trying to obtain money. But I talked about the corporation known as a family corporation. A family corporation meaning they're biologically connected to each other, like the Clinton Foundation, the Obama Foundation. These foundations consist of people that give money, and that's why they call themselves a foundation. One of the problems that I've seen with new nonprofits that's getting started, they have foundations in their name. And what happened is that when they go for grant, the grantor thinks that they are an organization that give out money. So they're not going to give them an organization to give out money. but only to an organization that's putting in the work in order to achieve the vision and the mission of that organization. So I did want to bring it up because I do say it a lot. People put foundations in their name. When foundations traditionally are those organizations that give money. It's known as corporate funding. Again, a source of large sums of money. Um, Corporate foundations like Walgreens, Walmart, um, um, Taco Bell, etc. What's interesting about corporate foundation is that they must give up to 12% of their net proceeds, 5% of their net proceeds to nonprofit types of organization like a 501c3. Then you have what's known as your federated funds, like the United Way. And finally, you have what's known as government funds. These are by far the hardest to get. You definitely want to go with your family and community foundation. They tend to be the easiest. And then your corporate foundation is the next easiest. And then you have your government funds. These are by far the hardest, and it's a tedious process that you have to go for. But they also give out large sums of money. So let's talk about what's the grant resource. I'm sorry, let me step back a second. What is a grant research tools that you can use? As you can see here, we list a number of different tools that you can use. But I do want to highlight a couple of them. One is the Foundation Center, which I think by far is probably one of the best that's out there. With the Foundation Center, they have identified who the funders are, who's giving money, be it government or be it foundation or corporation. Again, that's over 5,000, maybe 10,000, and I'm just saying conservative of people that's giving money. A lot of time when organizations go for money, they don't know the vast resources that are grants that are available. So they're limited to very few organizations that publish that they give funding. The Foundation Center exposes you to thousands, if not tens of thousands of possible funders that's funding it. And they do it in a comprehensive way as well. Then Grant Select also does it. I don't like that as much, but I do like Grant Station and Grant Gov as a mechanism to go on after the research. Grant Gloves is the federal government, and they identify federal and state funding that's out there. So do the Foundation Center. Grant.gov is where you want to go to get a federal grant. Now, needless to say, that is a four-step process in gaining a competitive funding edge. Well, the first thing you want to do is you want to have an understanding of the forms and the guidelines. You actually want to read what they're looking for and what are the guidelines. Then you want to talk to someone that received that grant in the past. It's called a grantee. Or you want to talk to a program reviewer. A program reviewer is this person that sat in and was one of the people that was part of the team that awarded a grant. And then you want to talk to and find out who is the program officer. When you're going for that grant, you always want to contact that program officer to let that person know, hey, look, we've seen the information about y'all wanting to fund organization for a particular purpose. Uh, we want to run some ideas through you as to what direction we're going in, and you can give us some insight as to whether or not we're going in the right direction. Folks, I'm an experienced grant writer. In fact, I'm considered to be a master grant writer, and I still contact the organization program officer. Now, you can find out who received grants in the past, who received grants in the past, who reviewed grants in the past, and the program coordinator by going to the Foundation Center and looking for who fund in a particular year, like Bank of America. You go to Bank of America and say, well, this is the year 2024. So you can look at those numbers related to the 2023. You can say who was some of the groups that they funded and who was the group that sat on the team to award the grant. And of course, you want to look for the most recent program officer in that particular organization by going to the Foundation Center. Whoa, that was a lot. Folks, I was not joking with you when I talked about a comprehensive, holistic approach to going after the money, creating the nonprofit, sustaining the nonprofit, and funding the nonprofit. Well, if you made it this far, you really, really, really want to go for the money and be successful. This next part of the workshop is going to deal with the problem. What is the problem? How do you articulate what the problem is? If there is no problem, there is no money. Now, some people call it a problem statement. Some people call it a need statement. So different people call it different things. Again, let's talk about the different components. It can be a problem statement, a need assessment, etc. Well, your problem statement or your need statement represents the reason behind your proposal. It should specify the conditions in which you plan to change. It should have at least some of these, and I'm not going to read all through all of these, but it should be supported with evidence such as statistical facts, expert views, and training. It should clearly convey the focus of your project in the early narrative. You should be able to establish the importance and the significance of the problem. Then you want to demonstrate that the problem is feasible and manageable to solve. The other thing you want to do is to indicate how the problem relates to your organizational goals. And you should be able to demonstrate the need for your methodology. We're going to talk a little bit about that later on. And your methodology in terms of activities, in terms and time, gather data necessary to support a need statement or a statement of the problem. We call it quantitative and qualitative research. So what is quantitative research? Quantitative research is that data which is subjective. That data that you get from your research. For example, it deals with the why as well as it deals with the what. In the quantitative research, let's say, for example, you want to deal with youth. Well, in getting your quantitative research, you want to first of all do the research to see how many young people are, for example, juvenile delinquency. You need to do that research. You need to do it on a national, the state, and the local level, so you got a sense of the numbers related to what the problem is. Then, at the same time, you want to do research and say, well, why do the problem exist? And who say the problem exists? And what are the potential solutions to that particular problem? Then you will go in there, maybe Google, and put in what is the problem that leads juveniles to being delinquent. And what's going to come up is all kind of research papers, like from colleges, universities, from the government, from peer groups, etc., that you want to be able to highlight related to solutions to the problem. Qualitative research is that subjective research. This is where you bring people together to do like a focus group, maybe do interviews with individuals, you get their assessment as to what is the problem and why is the problem. In the case of juvenile delinquency, you bring together a group of youth, at-risk youth, and begin to ask them questions. So they can answer questions, so you know you're heading in the right direction related to the solution. Finally, basically, quantitative research is subjective. I'm sorry, quantitative research is objective, and quantitative research, let me back up, it's been a long night. Quantitative research is objective, and qualitative research is subjective. Now that we understand what the problem is, we've been able to show who's causing the problem, why they're causing the problem, the research that support the reason why the problem exists. And now you want to start to put together your program that leads to the solution to that problem. This is what we call the program design and the program approach. Remember we talked earlier about conceptualizations when we talked earlier in the presentation? Now, the next stage of the next level of your understanding of conceptualization. Remember when we talked about the vision, the mission, the purpose? Your next stage is to go get even deeper. Now you have to start to ask yourself, from a conceptualization perspective, what is the goal? Now, you have to define your goal. A goal is a broad statement of what you wish to accomplish. A goal is really about the final impact or outcome that you wish to bring about. Your next step in this process is your strategy. You got your goal together. Now, what is your strategy? A strategy is a plan of action, a method, a process, or a specific step taken to accomplish your goals. Now that you got that, your next step is your objective. Your objectives is specify the outcome of your final product or the end result. They should be tangible. When we talk about objectives, they should be specific, immediate, measurable, practical, logical, and you should be able to evaluate it. The fact of the matter is that there's different types of objectives. You have your behavioral objectives, your performance objectives, your process objectives, and your product objective. Okay, now that we got that behind us, And we got our mission, our vision, our purpose, our goal, our objective, our strategy. Now we have to start to put the proposal together. This is what we call the method section. We're taking it from the conceptualization stage, and now we're putting it into the implementation stage. Well, what is the method section? Well, this section describes your project activities in detail, indicating how your objectives will be accomplished. It should include at least some of the following, and I'm not going to list all of them. First of all, it should have a description of how you will accomplish each of your objectives. It should have a description of your personnel need, your staffing requirement, qualifications, and job description. Also, a description of what facilities do you need, what equipment, and what materials do you need as well. It should also talk about how will the program be administrated. How will it be coordinated with your other activities? What's the scope of your activities? And it should be reasonable and done in a reasonable time manner. So these are some, and you can read the rest when I send the presentation of the others. Now, let's start to break down the proposal again. Proposal, the introduction. The introduction is a credible statement that describes your professional and organizational qualifications and establish the significance, of your idea. Conclusion. Well, every proposal should have a concluding paragraph or two. This is a good place to call attention to the future after the grant is completed. This section should also be a place to make a final appeal for your project. It should briefly it should briefly retard what your organization wants to do and why it is important. Underscore why your agency needs the funding to accomplish what it does. Also, don't be afraid at this stage to use a bit of emotional appeal. If your mother that lost a child out there to violence, in this section, you would say, I started this organization not because I want to, but because of a pain that's so deep of a mother that lost her only child. It is only in this section, the conclusion, that you can make an emotional appeal. Folks, I suggest you make an emotional appeal. Okay, let's talk about how you plan to disseminate the information. How do you plan to get that information out there? I can't overemphasize the need for using artificial intelligence to help you with this. Now, you can let's talk about some of the ways that you can do. You can get information out there. Well, you got your newsletter or your project newsletter, your conference or seminars if you're going to do that, your website, your social media, all phases of your social media. That's why you definitely want to use ChatGPT and artificial intelligence. You want to show your demonstrations. You definitely want to use ChatGPT and artificial intelligence. We're going to talk about how that plays into your nonprofit now and how this can take you to a level that puts you on the same plane as with as with an organization that's been around forever. And those organizations, a type of organization that you're going to be competing with for funding. So we're going to talk about ChatGPT and artificial intelligence. You also, any speeches that you've given on behalf of your organization, you want to definitely make that as part of your dissemination as well as any press release. Okay, now let's get to the appendix. Well, what should be attached to the last pages of that particular grant proposal? First, any news articles about your organization, any certificates that you may have gotten, a list of your board members and members in your offices with title, your recent annual report, your organizational physical report, your past success story, and letters of support, as well as resumes. Appearance. You want to make sure that you are following the format that the grantor has asked you to follow. That's why it's important when you're looking at that grant proposal, you go into that section that talks about appearance and format that they want you to use. For example, if they ask you to use bold type, do you want to use bold type? If they ask you to use heading, you want to use heading. If they ask you to number that particular proposal, you want to number that particular proposal. If they're asking you to use Rome, time Rome's in terms of fonts, you want to use that. If they're asking you to use white space that is double space, you want to do that as well. Okay, man, this is a lot of information. So when I tell you that it's comprehensive and holistic and very, very much about trying to put you in that position that you can go after and get that money. That's right. It's more to just starting a nonprofit. The next section deals with evaluation. Evaluation talks about how do you prove your success? What does it look like? So let's jump into evaluation. So there are different types when we look on the program evaluation. Well, actually, the success, what success look like. That success include a program evaluation. This is a program that examine your achievements of the program. We're going to talk about what that looks like in graphic forms in a little while. The other thing you want to talk about, what is your performance measurements that you're going to use? We're going to talk about that in a little while. And then you want to talk about the program itself. See, a program may be any activity, project, function, or policy that has an identifiable purpose or set of purpose. So now let's talk about the first type of evaluation. This is what we call a goal-based evaluation. A goal-based evaluation is normally for those organizations that's been around for like years and years and years. A goal-based evaluation makes sure that you're following the path that you set forth on the beginning. That evaluation is going to look at your goals and your objective. Is it consistent with what it's supposed to be from day one? It's going to talk about the process and activities. It's the process and activities we're doing the same as was from day one. And it's going to talk about finally your outcomes. Are the outcomes the same outcome that you initially started off with? In other words, goal-based evaluation evaluates the extent to which the program of meeting predetermined goals and objectives. The next type of evaluation that we want to look at is what's known as a logic model. A logic model is based on what's known as an outcome-based let me get my words out. Evaluation. Oops, didn't mean to do that, folks. Let me go back here. So a logic model is used by most nonprofits. It's an outcome-based evaluation that facilitates your asking if the organization is really doing the right program activities to bring about the outcome you believe is the best outcome to come into place. So what are the different components? Well, the first component is your goal. You want to, first of all, put down your goal right on top. For example, in this case, the goal is to reduce the risk of teenage pregnancy among at-risk youth between the ages of 10 to 14. There are different components or different elements to a logic model. The first part of the logic model is known as what are your process objectives? Or in other words, what is the what in your organization? The second is what are the activities that you plan to do? Or in other words, the how to your organization. The next section is what is the responsible parties? In other words, who does what? The next is what are your expected outcomes? Or in other words, the why. The next column indicates your program measurements or the evidence to prove of what you say you're doing, what you do. The next is the data resource or the where. Where is the data to prove what you say you're doing? And then finally is the time measurement. This is the when. When are things supposed to be done? Like if you're going to do it in a year, you're going to say, this is going to be done in 3 months, and 3 months on up to a year. And then finally, the last type of evaluation is what's known as a process-based evaluation. Process-based evaluations are geared to fully understanding how the program works. How does it produce the results that it does? And it's broken down into 3 columns. First is when you articulate what is the community problem or need. And then next, what is the specific intervention that you plan to bring about? And then finally, what is the outcome that you plan to bring about? These collectively talk about a process-based evaluation. A process-based evaluation shows every step that must be done in order to bring about the change that you're trying to bring about. Okay, wow, man, wow. Now we get down to the organization. And talking about the organization, we're talking about how do you grow as an organization? What are the things you need in place to grow as an organization? Mama, we talked about the workshop deals with how to start a nonprofit, how to finance a nonprofit. Now we're going to go to how to operate a nonprofit and how to grow a nonprofit. So this is where we're talking about organizational capacity, the why, the who, the what, and the how much. Some of the things we want to know. Why does your organization exist? Who are you? What are the programs and activities that you propose to do to solve the problem? how will you implement your programs? And then how much will it cost? In terms of organization, the real money, you should have in place your policies and procedures. We talked earlier about those policies and procedures. Your staffing requirements, your funding sustainability, your physical control, accounting practices. You should also have in place assets to support resources for sustainability. And then your SWOT analogy or your SWOT test. This is how you grow your nonprofit. This is a section that talks about how strong in your organization and what is your plan to win. The other thing that you want to have in place as you move forward with your nonprofit, and we're talking about, again, infrastructure, it's a 5-year strategic plan. That 5-year strategic plan, some of the components of it should be your goals, your strategies, your objectives, your tactics, your operations, and your methods. Before you even think about filing for a major grant, this should be in place. Now, your strategic plan looks internally at the organization. That is the organization itself. It looks in and say, how can we improve? How can we get better? What do we do? Your business plan, in which we want to talk about shortly, talk about your financing of the plan. Because a lot of people confuse strategic and program, your strategic and your business plan as the same thing. Now, how do we grow organizational capacity? Well, we do it by putting together what's known as a SWOT and analyst. And this is what we call, this is a strategic planning tools to evaluate your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities and threats involved in a project or in a business venture. Well, what are your strengths? We're talking about how well do you do things, among other things. What are your weaknesses? What could you do to improve your organization? What are your opportunities? What opportunities are available to you? And then finally, your threats. Whoa, threats. Sorry about that. What trends can hurt you? For example, is the government funding less? Or other funding less? Or other organizations doing better than you that's doing the same thing and able to do it better? So that's, and who are your competitors? Are you up to par with your competitors? That has to do with threats. Key components of a strong organization. You should know, what are your values? That is, what do you believe? You should also know, what is your mission? Why do you exist? This is part of what's known as your long-term objectives, as you can see in the orange box. Next, you should have a conversation about your vision. And your vision is, where do the organization plan to go? What does the future look like? And this particular, let me back up. Did I say your mission, your value and your mission has to do with what you believe and why you exist? Trust me, this is the third class that I've given today. So things are about to get crazy. Sorry. So anyway, let me backtrack. Your values and your mission deals with what you believe and why you exist. And that deals with your long-term focus. Your vision talks about where you plan to go. And this is your intermediate term focus. And that's your vision. And then finally, for the next two components is your strategy and your tactics. Your strategy is how will you get there? And tactics is what will you do to get there? And this has to do with your short-term objective. So you see long-term, medium, and short-term. We talked about stage 3 of your nonprofit. Here are all the things that you need to have in place. We talked about the strategic plan. The other thing that you want to have in plan during stage 3, and again, we provide assistance with all of these documents that we talked about. We provide assistance in putting together that strategic plan, your business plan. Your business plan talk about your 3 to 5 year financial outlook as opposed to your strategic plan, which talks about the internal operation of your organization. Then next is your operational plan. How do you plan to operate? What time do you open it up? And all those things like that. Operation. Then your financial management. Then the other stage, and part of stage 3, is your funding. How are you going to do fundraising? What strategy are you going to use? And we're going to talk about how artificial intelligence can help you with that. Then you want to talk about your safety and risk management. This is a very key document that you should have together. We work with you on putting that together. Then you want to have your marketing plan as well as your branding plan. And then finally, talk about your partnerships and your collaboratives. Funding. Most people love this section right here. Let's talk about funding. Let's talk about where you will get the money at in order to operate your nonprofit. The funding proposal deals with not only as funding that you have now, but also future funding. It's what will be necessary to keep your nonprofit operational. It also identifies potential resources and how you plan to secure those resources. Here's a model that I use, and let's look at it. It's called a social entrepreneurship model. Most of your successful nonprofits have a model like this. And what are we talking about? We're talking about the ability to fund the future of a nonprofit through a combination of earned income, your own business, charitable contribution, grants, and other public sector subsidies. In other words, money from the government. The earned income is used to pursue social objectives by simultaneously seeking both financial and social return on your investment. Let's talk about the 4 columns. The first column that you want to put together has to do with your resource or your revenue. In other words, input. How is money coming in? It can come in through grants, through fee for services, through development fees if you're doing affordable housing and you're selling housing, consulting fees because you're good at what you do, and now you're going to other organizations and you're charging them based on where they can get to where you are at. Then you want to do your own, talking about owning your own business as a nonprofit, and you can, as long as it's within the mission and vision. For example, if you're a youth organization, you can start a t-shirt shop. I know a nonprofit in Tampa that did that. Ice cream shop. same organization did an ice cream shop in which they hire youth to run it and to bring in different revenue. So it's a lot of ways that you can bring in money to start your own money, to start your own business in order to generate what's known as earned income. Earned income is money that you earn as opposed to money that you get from the government and foundation. And then next, you can also use other ways of bringing in money as well. Next, you identify how you plan to bring in the money, the input. Now, the next section under that is called output. That is, what is the money going to be used for? In this section right here, they're using it for program, employment program, public safety, youth program, community building, affordable housing, community mapping, and neighborhood revitalization. Your output might be different depending upon what you want to accomplish. The next column we want to look at is known as your outcomes. What's going to be the outcome of everything that you're doing? In this case, they saying that, well, we're going to increase employment opportunities in the community. We're going to increase affordable housing. We're going to reduce crime because now people are working. We're going to improve the quality of life with affordable housing, a crime-free community, and a healthy community. After you identify what those outcomes are, the next column has to do with, well, what are the benefits? And the benefits could be anywhere from increase in tax base now that you reduce crime, and reduction in required city services, if we're doing like public safety, youth program and programs, a reduction in public safety, if we're doing these programs that lead to jobs and helping young people, and also a reduction in terms of the risk to lenders. Like a lender, for example, a bank or a credit union, when they give money, they want to make sure they get it back. And if they give money to a community that's really a community that's doing a lot of development, a lot of focus on reducing crime, improving the quality of life, then their investment is more likely to be a good investment. And then besides your lenders and they feel that you reduce the risk of their money, the next thing is that you want to, when it related to investors, you want investors to know that because of you putting money into your organization, that you're going to reduce return on their investment for investors. Those people that putting grant money in your program, donation, and things of that nature. You're showing that it's going to be a high return on dollars you put in. You get $5 back in social return as well as financial return. And then finally, under this model, it's a better quality of life for residents who occupy the community. The budget. We're getting close to the end. The budget, the numbers. Well, let's talk a little bit about the budget, this briefly. By the way, we give an extensive workshop on putting together a budget and things of that nature. Well, a budget is more than just a statement of proposed expenditures. It's also an alternate way of expressing your project. There are different types of costs associated with your nonprofit. The first is direct costs, the costs that are line items in your budget. Direct costs. These is the costs that are not directly listed in your budget, yet the cost is also incurred for your organization. For example, your direct costs will probably be hiring a counselor for your organization for youth. Your indirect costs will be hiring a lawyer to make sure that your organization is legally protected, or hiring an accountant. That's an indirect cost as opposed to a direct cost. And then that's what's known as cost sharing. It might be a situation where three nonprofits get together and they share the cost of that particular grant. And then finally, in kind. We talked about that earlier, pro bono work. This is the costs that do not require cash outlay, yet will be cost real dollars if you had to pay for it yourself. Some funders, in fact, most funders, require that you do a budget justification narrative, in which you explain every dollar that you're asking for and why you need it. Now, and this is next to the end. How can artificial intelligence help your organization as a nonprofit? I must say that artificial intelligence and ChatGPT is doing the impossible for my nonprofit. First of all, it reduced the number of staff that I need to have, because now I can get artificial intelligence to use it to do what I need, to be my salesperson, my secretary, and then this goes on how you can use artificial intelligence. So let's talk about some of the ways that you can use artificial intelligence. Most funders are asking the question, how can you do more with less? Hence, artificial intelligence, because you no longer need the number of staff that you once needed in order to operate. So artificial intelligence can enhance fundraising and donor engagement. Artificial intelligence can help nonprofits analyze donor data, segment donors, and personalize messages. It can optimize campaigns and predict donors' behavior. It also can improve program delivery and impact measurements. What I mean? Artificial intelligence can help nonprofits design and implement programs, monitor and evaluate outcomes, and identify the best practice and scale up to successful intervention. It can also help streamlining operation and reduce costs. Artificial intelligence can help nonprofits automate tasks, optimize workflow, improve collaboration, and increase efficiencies and productivities. And finally, artificial intelligence can be innovating in solving problems. Let me back up for a second. It's getting really, really late. Artificial can help in innovating and solving social problems. What that means? Artificial intelligence can help nonprofits discover insights, generate new ideas, and create new solutions and tackle complex challenges. So we're coming to the end of the presentation. I want to thank everybody for coming to class tonight. I think one of the key things that makes our organization so successful when we're either writing a grant for a person or teaching a person to write a grant is the fact that I've sat on a number of review boards, whereas I was part of the team to evaluate what grant proposals got funded and what didn't. It's like the inside secrets when it comes to grant writing. Not only do I come to the table with showing you how to write that grant, but also from a donor's perspective, the people that's giving them money, to have you to think like they think. Thank you. We're at the end for taking part in the Knights of Class. We offer an in-depth class on how to write a grant. All those things that we talked about earlier. It's a 10-lesson course in anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. Grant writers make anywhere from $20 to $200 an hour. This can actually be a side hustle for you, as well as a game changer if you're the head of a nonprofit. What funders want to see is that you got grant writers on board with your organization. So every time you go for a grant, you can show that we got a grant writer to start writing a grant. The other thing is that we prepared, as we stated earlier, the paperwork for your nonprofit to get started. Your articles, your bylaws, or your conflict of interest, all of those documents we can do for $275. We normally charge $450, but because you attend the class tonight related to the paperwork for your nonprofit, the Artists of Incorporation will do it for $275. But when you email us, and here's the information that you can email us, as well as the numbers you can contact us at. Make sure you mention that you took the NICE class and you want a discount on the paperwork. Now keep in mind, the paperwork includes articles of incorporation, your conflict of interest policy, putting together the application for your 501c3, your bylaws, about 6 different documents that we normally to start your nonprofit. And you want to take our 10-week grant course, which is a different cost other than the 501c3. I hope this has helped you. I encourage you to stay in contact with me. We provide an array of different types of workshops. Last week we did a workshop on how to do a business plan, putting together a professional business plan. The week for that we did a workshop on how to do a strategic plan. The week before that, we did a workshop on artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, and the Web3, and changing the narrative in poor communities and uplifting nonprofits. Again, thanks again for attending the NICE workshop. This will be the final workshop of the year for 2024. And